Hi everyone, welcome to Tips with Rachel. If we haven't met yet, I'm Rachel, and again, welcome. All right, today's video is going to be a continuation in our series on tips for practicing. These tips are good for dancers of any level and can be used whether you are practicing solo or with a partner. Make sure you stick around to the very end of the video to catch my number one tip on what I think we should all be using more in our practicing. All right, let's dive in. Tip number one, make sure that you decide what you are going to prioritize in your practice. And make sure that you're not choosing too many things to prioritize for the amount of time that you have for your practice that day. If you're a little more advanced, you might be narrowing down your priority to something very, very specific. Whereas if you're a little more, if you're newer to dancing, your priority might be something more general. So if you're a newer dancer, you might be just focusing on remembering your patterns for one of your dances. And if you're a little more advanced, then maybe you're focusing on just one section of your choreography or just one or two patterns where you're really honing in on your timing or focusing on being more consistent with using your mechanics through that pattern, right? Prioritizing what you're going to work on helps you maximize the amount of time that you have for your practice. All right, tip number two, slow down. Slow down. This is one that a lot of us do not like to hear, especially when we are planning on working on a dance that's supposed to be fast, right? But when we slow down our movements, slow down our actions, it is a lot easier for us to catch those little mistakes, to notice the things that we're missing. If we're practicing with a partner, it's easier to notice where maybe one of us thinks we're supposed to be doing one thing and the other of us thinks it's something else, right? We can catch those things a lot easier when we are moving slower, which makes it easier for us to then work on those moments, improve those moments, and progress our dancing. Well, it doesn't mean that you should never practice up to tempo or never practice with the music. Obviously, we want to do those things too, but make certain that you are also slowing down in your practice. All right, that brings me to my final tip of the day, which is a tip that I think we should all be using more in our dancing, including myself, and that is know when to take a break. All right, we've all been there when we've been practicing, maybe even on a lesson or in a class where you've been moving along really great, you're feeling good about your dancing, you're making some progress, making some improvements, and then you kind of hit a wall, right? You hit a little plateau where all of a sudden it doesn't feel like you're moving forward anymore, and sometimes you start even feeling like you're regressing, right? Maybe you're making mistakes you've never made before. Maybe it feels like you're trying to dance in somebody else's body, right? And what a lot of us do when we get these moments is we try to barrel through. We try to push through it. We say, no, I can do this. And we try to just keep going. And sometimes that'll work. Sometimes that will push us through that wall or get us over that plateau. But in my experience, both with myself and watching other dancers in their practice and learning experiences, that most of the time what this does is it tends to make the situation worse. The mistakes and problems become amplified. We become stressed. If we're working with a partner, often they become stressed. We get stressed with them. They're stressed with us. Everything gets blown out of proportion. It gets a little crazy, right? And the next thing you know, this is the part of your routine or the pattern in your dancing that you absolutely hate. You hate getting to it. You think that you're terrible at it. You don't like it. You're always trying to avoid it, right? Well, I challenge you the next time that you run into this wall like this plateau, that instead of trying to barrel through it, take a break. Step away from it, maybe go work on a different section of your choreography, work on a different pattern, maybe move to a completely different dance, maybe even just call it a day, right? Come back to practice tomorrow or whenever your next session is. And that's really what the key is. It's just a break, right? We're not quitting. We're not giving up on that. We're taking a break. The key is you're going to come back to that piece that was giving you some problems that you were struggling with, where you hit the wall, where you hit the plateau. You're going to come back to it later after your brain has had some time to process the information and assimilate what you were working on. You're going to come back with a fresh perspective, fresh eyes, a fresh body maybe even, right? And in my experience, again, the majority of the time, this is a huge step in solving the problem. A lot of the little problems you were having aren't even there anymore. A lot of times even the big problem, because your brain had time to process it, a lot of times the big problem is now also solved. Yes, and if it isn't, at the very least, it doesn't seem quite as big as it did before, right? And you're on, again, a fresh path. It's easier to then now tackle this new problem, get to solving it, and getting over that plateau or through that wall that we were hitting. All right, that's it for today. I hope these tips were helpful. If they were, make sure to give us a like, and then make certain that you are following us to catch more tip videos in the future. Happy dancing.